Hey everyone, welcome back to Crash Couch. For those of you new to the channel, I play a mage in the Guild Fusion, and this past weekend we cleared Sunwell Plateau on the PTR, and a number of questions I've been getting since then have been, are Arcane mages dead come Sunwell, and should we go fire? And the main reason for that being the fact that the fights are all longer in duration, the Shadow Priest is needed for healer mana, so that the Arcane mages are no longer getting the Shadow Priest sometimes, and we're also not getting any innervates. So, is it the fact that Arcane mages are dead come Sunwell release? Well, the short answer is no, and in this video I want to cover why I think that's the case, and I also want to cover a number of other areas such as, should we go fire and is it ever better to go fire? Should we be getting the Shadow Priest, and based on my experience clearing Sunwell? And also, should you plan for Arcane or fire for the rest of Phase 5 based on those previous things? But first, please like and subscribe if you like the content, it really helps me out. Drop me a follow at twitch.tv/Kateriev to catch me live, and join my Discord to ask questions or discuss recent content. You can find the link in the description. So first, if you look at our boss damage the past weekend, we didn't do that bad. On kil'jaeden, an 8.5 minute fight with no innervates, we still did pretty decent. Muru, we also performed pretty well. Again, none of these fights with innervates. Brutalis, we did still pretty decent even with a scuffed ending to that fight, and Fell Mist we also did well, except I died like a noob, so my damage is crap compared to Deary's. But overall, we did alright. The one fight where we didn't do well on is Twins, and that's because we did okay damage in Phase 1, which is really all that matters. However, our damage fell off a cliff towards the end of it because we didn't have a Shadow Priest for the entire encounter because the healers needed because the fight is so healer intensive. So while these results don't apply to every Arcane mage in their particular guild or raid situation, they do give a preliminary snapshot into how Arcane mages will perform in Sunwell in progression upon launch, and other logs show similar or even better results. So in general, Arcane mages, even during progression, the hardest time for an Arcane mage to perform well, will still be performing well during progression. And as the phase goes on, it'll only get better for Arcane mages. I hesitate to use the word scale given the memes that have surrounded it with lower locks, but for the sake of the memes, I will say it. Mages will scale as Phase 5 plays out, and there's a number of reasons for this, right? So our damage is only going to get better as the phase plays out because encounters are going to get further optimized, right? Players and tanks are going to take less damage, and then healers are going to get better at healing as well through gear and optimizations, and encounters are going to get shortened through better DPS. All those things are going to help out Arcane mages because as healers no longer need the innervates or the Shadow Priest or both. That's all going to go play into boosting the Arcane mage's damage, and as everyone gets geared up with more better DPS gear and the fights get shorter, that's also going to boost our DPS. Additionally, our polymorph will always be valuable for trash as well as for Muru depending on your guild strategy. So Sunwell is far from the death of Arcane mages, and considering how we performed this past weekend, it's only going to continue to get better, and we're going to scale, guys. The other question I've been asked a lot is, well, if Arcane can't perform as well as it could in the past due to these factors, wouldn't it make more sense to go fire? And the simple answer is that even in the worst circumstances for the Arcane mage, such as Sunwell progression where the fights are long and you may not have an innervate or even a Shadow Priest for an entire encounter, Arcane still outperforms fire in an apples to apples comparison, and that's after looking at logs and simming these nightmare scenarios for Arcane mages for 6+ minute fights, between fire and Arcane spec. And after all of that simming and looking at logs, I really don't see any situation where it would make sense for a mage that has been Arcane to switch to fire, as it would require them to have the situation where they have semi-bis Arcane gear but full Phase 4 bis fire gear for fire to outperform Arcane. And even then, it would be 20 to 30 DPS tops. The only situation that applies to is mages that have already made the decision to be fire the entire expansion. And even then, all it takes for a semi-bis Arcane mage to do more DPS than that full Phase 4 bis fire mage is to get a single innervate or to get the Shadow Priest back from healers for even just a third of the fight, and the Arcane mage will then blow past the fire mage. And as the phase plays out, that's exactly what will happen. Encounters will get shorter, we'll either get an innervate or get the Shadow Priest back entirely, or both, and Arcane mage will once again be miles ahead of fire, along with less threat issues and no travel time on spellcast. The one caveat on this is that for these longer fights, you do need to play Arcane properly, and by that I mean use your regen rotations, your Frostbolt filler outside of your CDs. Otherwise, you will hurt your damage, but that isn't that hard to do, and it really is as simple as using your regen rotation outside of CDs. So given that we should stay Arcane and that Shadow Priest in our group is all it takes for us to do good DPS even on these longer fights, should we expect to have the Shadow Priest in Sunwell progression? Well, that depends on your guild and its healer situation, and what I can do is offer some perspective based on our clears for each of the bosses. So for Caligos, healer mana was an issue, and you could even get an Innervate, so nothing to really talk about there. For Brutalis, the healers used the Innervates, but we're still tapped on our progression kill by the end of it, so it may make sense to swap the Shadow Priest into the healer group for the last 30% of the fight to play it safe during progression. But otherwise, we should expect to see the Shadow Priest for this encounter, and I should also add that during our Brutalis kill, we had a number of deaths early in the encounter, so the fight length went much longer than it should have. For Fell Mist, this fight at first seems like a problem for mana given its length. However, you get so much downtime for regen during the air phases that mana really wasn't a concern for both healers and arcane mages. So you should expect to see the Shadow Priest here and possibly Innervates in the near future. Now, for Twins, fortunately, this is the one fight where our performance will suffer because it's so healer intensive that I don't see us getting Innervates or a Shadow Priest anytime soon, as the healers require both, and they even use heroism and lust in order to ensure that they can keep everyone topped up. That said, our DPS in phase 1 is what matters most for this encounter, because if you get through phase 1, you've basically beaten it. And our DPS in phase 1 is still decent as long as you blow through all of your mana in that phase. For Muru, the healers utilized the Innervates, but otherwise didn't require the Shadow Priest for mana, so it's reasonable to expect the Shadow Priest for this fight. However, we also 7-healed this fight, and with 6 healers that may change things, and the healers may require the Shadow Priest for part of the fight during progression. Lastly, for kil'jaeden, we were able to utilize the Shadow Priest for the entire encounter, which was enough to do great damage, and especially great damage on the orbs due to our burstiness. So overall, if your guild is similar to ours, then you can expect to have the Shadow Priest for the majority of these encounters for almost all of the duration of those encounters. However, if your guild is more semi-hardcore or casual and doesn't have as high of raid DPS or raid HPS or both, then the healers may be stressed more and need the Shadow Priest for most of the encounters, or maybe the answer will be to have more healers for your guild and then mana may not be an issue. It all depends. But either way, being Arcane is still the play, and we will scale as the phase progresses. Alright, thank you for coming to my TED Talk, and let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree and what your guild's plans are in Sunwell. Again, please like and subscribe if you like the content. It definitely helps me out. Drop me a follow at twitch.tv/Criteria for live progression runs and speedruns, and join my Discord to ask questions or discuss recent content. You can find the Discord link in the description. Thanks everyone for watching, and good luck in Sunwell.